而家我哋夠鐘有個法定人數。
Members, it's the appointed time, and we have a quorum. We now proceed to the Finance Committee meeting to be held by video conferencing. The meeting will end at 6:30 p.m. and if necessary, I would extend the meeting by 50 minutes. Simultaneous interpretation service is provided. Participants can select the language channel in the Zoom system, and the meeting would be broadcast live through the electrical online broadcasting system. Please switch on the video function in the Zoom system and show your faces, and your microphones would only be switched on upon my instruction. When taking part in the meeting, members must use the virtual background function showing the specified color. We would first deal with an application for late membership of the Finance Committee by Ms. Maggie Chan. According to paragraph 2B of the Finance Committee procedure, any application for late membership will be considered by members with sufficient grounds provided by the member in question. The letter from Ms. Maggie Chan has been shared with members before the meeting. Does anyone wish to speak? We now proceed to a vote. Can staff members please switch the Zoom system to the gallery view? For members who are not members of the Finance Committee, please refrain from voting, and during the vote, please show your faces and hand clearly. The item proposed is the Finance Committee accepts an application for late membership by Ms. Maggie Chan. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Those against, please raise your hands. Those who abstain, please raise your hands. The majority of the members are in favor of the motion. The motion is passed. We now move on to the next item on the agenda. Members are invited to approve an increase in commitment by $27 billion from $168.9 billion to $195.9 billion under Head 142, Government Secretariat, Offices of the Chief Secretary for Administration and Financial Secretary, Subhead 700, General Non-Recurrent Item 803 for injection into the Anti-epidemic Fund to provide funding for various relief measures targeted at eligible businesses and individuals hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic and the tightening of the social distancing measures introduced by the government. B, relaxation of the prevailing terms and conditions in relation to repayments by self-financing post-secondary institutions under the Startup Loan Scheme, loans for international schools, as well as the student financial assistance schemes. And C, relaxation of the prevailing terms and conditions in relation to repayments under the Fisheries Development Loan Fund. Mr. John Lee, the Chief Secretary, could not attend the meeting due to reasons related to COVID. Mr. Edward Yao is in attendance, and the attendance list has been shared with members. If members have any direct or indirect pecuniary interests on the items to be discussed, please disclose the nature of such interest before you speak, according to Rule 83 of the Rules of Procedure. Please also note voting arrangements in case of direct pecuniary interests, according to Rule 84. I first invite Mr. Edward Yao to speak before we proceed to questions. Mr. Yao, please. Chairman, members, good afternoon. Yesterday morning, the government provided a paper to the Finance Committee to apply for an injection of $27 billion into the Anti-epidemic Fund for the sixth round to support businesses and individuals affected by the pandemic and tightening of social distancing measures. And I hope the funding could be supported and approved by the Finance Committee as soon as possible so that we can implement the relevant measures. I also urge the policy bureaus and departments to implement these measures as soon as possible to allow the businesses and individuals to benefit as soon as possible. In drawing up the 6th round of the relief measures, different policy bureaus have taken in views from the sectors and the public in order to more readily understand their needs and to draw up the corresponding support and subsidy levels. So these are the key characteristics of the 6th round of support measures. We strive to formulate a plan as soon as possible. Since the Chief Executive announced the latest round of AEF on the 27th of January, different departments have been working in full steam, and we are now seeking funding approval from the Finance Committee. We hope to support the needy individuals and businesses. For the latest round of AEF, the sum amounts to $27 billion. For premises affected by different measures, they would the funding they receive would be double compared with the previous round, and more than 60% of the funds would go towards helping individuals. The 6th round of AEF strives to take care of sectors that are affected by the pandemic, such as the laundry trade, dishware, washing trade, local produce farmers, etc. The government took in the views of LegCo members and various associations. We are rolling out a temporary unemployment support for the first time to provide a one-off $10,000 subsidy for those who are temporarily unemployed. We also understand the plight of certain frontline workers who have helped battle the epidemic, such as property management staff, frontline cleaners, staff from RCHEs and RCHDs, airport frontline staff, etc. We would offer a monthly subsidy of $2,000 for 5 months, which totals $10,000 per person. For the job creation scheme, we have reserved $6.6 billion under the 6th AEF to create 30,000 time-limited jobs. Apart from injection into the AEF, we also seek approval from the Finance Committee to provide a one-off interest-free deferral for loan repayments under the Startup Loan Scheme and the Fisheries Development Loan Fund. About 67,000 businesses and 750,000 individuals would benefit. This could help retain jobs and preserve the vitality of our economy, so when the current outbreak eases, the economy can recover very soon. Before we were hit by the 5th wave in 2021, we saw that the real GDP rebounded strongly by 6.4% and unemployment dropped to 3.9%. It showed that businesses could rebound quickly and the economy can pick up steam once COVID subsides. Myself and my team are happy to answer any questions from members. Thank you very much. We now proceed to questions. To allow members to speak in an orderly and fair manner, I would first ask staff members to clear the raise hand markers. Please do not press the button yet. Members who wish to speak, please press the raise hand button in the Zoom system. I would read out the names of the first few members. The order will be shared with members in about 10 minutes by the clerk. First, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, Mr. Dominic Lee, Mr. Chan Pan, Mr. Peter Shiu, Ms. Rebecca Chen, Mr. Wong Kwok, Mr. Horace Chang, Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. 4 minutes including question and answer. Please allow time for officials to respond. Dr. Lo. Chairman, the government has considered the plight of the people affected by the fifth outbreak. Many sectors have taken a hard hit. So for the $27 billion sought by the government, we are convening a special meeting at the Finance Committee, and we certainly support the proposal. The difficulties are imminent, so despite imperfections in the plan, myself and the BPA would certainly support the proposal. So hopefully we can hear some good news today. The government has heeded our advice by providing emergency relief for the unemployed. Even though $10,000 might not mean much for the unemployed, but at least the government has decided to do something this time. In terms of the Development Bureau, they have yet to address the requests of the engineering trade. And there is a subsidy program to help or to provide a subsidy to revitalizing historic buildings through partnership scheme, PMQ, and flyover. Many businesses actually face liquidity issues, and some construction sites have seen positive cases, and as such the works had to be halted, and some were waiting for the test results for their workers, and the workers are unable to work at the construction sites. An instant answer might not be available today for these workers, but the Development Bureau must review the situation of the construction industry and for works that have fallen behind due to COVID, penalties should not be imposed, and the government should provide a 6-month grace period for the works. So I look forward to a reply from the government. Mr. Yao, I'd like to thank Dr. Lo for his support. I would invite the Development Bureau to address these questions. Chairman, am I coming through? Yes. Undersecretary. I'd like to thank Dr. Lo for his suggestion. We would certainly consider the idea, and after consulting the trade, we would iron out the details. If there are any works delays due to COVID-19, we can consider offering some exemptions. In previous rounds of AEF, there was some support offered to businesses in the construction industry. Many businesses in the industry are trying to stay afloat. So if cash flow issues surface again, then this is a problem that must be addressed. Next, Mr. Dominic Lee. Mr. Lee. The fifth wave of the outbreak is much more severe than we expected. We believe the relevant anti-epidemic measures would last quite some time. I'd like to thank the government for addressing or heeding the advice of the New People's Party by injecting into the sixth round of AEF, and hopefully the proposal will be passed today. The injection will support needy individuals and businesses. We support the direction, but we do have some recommendations. In terms of the living subsidy, I'd like to thank the government for answering our call. However, applicants could only apply if they are unemployed for at least 1 month. So are you actually encouraging people, not unemployed people, not to find new work yet? I think this is something worth thinking about. Many industries have been affected by the pandemic, but they weren't covered by the measures. For instance, for vegetable store owners, due to issues at the border, the produce are stored at the border, and as such they lost a lot of business. So hopefully a $10,000 subsidy under the CCF could be extended to them. The catering sector needs more support as well. Their suppliers, including companies operating at food factories, saw their business affected as well, so could more support be given. For real estate agents or insurance agents, their business has been affected by COVID as well. So in terms of supporting freelance workers, they were required to produce proof of MPF contributions. So in that case, how can they benefit from the 6th AEF? Secretary, Mr. Lee asked about 5 questions for on unemployment and freelancers. I would defer to Ms. Ho, the head of PICO, for catering premises. I would invite the FHB to answer, and for the rest, for insurance, I would defer to the FSTB. When applicants apply for temporary unemployment relief, they must have been unemployed for at least 1 month. We considered the threshold. If the period is too long, then needy people would not receive the support they need. But if the threshold is too low, then there could be potential abuse. That's why we set the standard at 1 month. So if applicants secure a job afterwards, their eligibility for the relief would not be affected. For freelancers, we believe most applicants can confirm their eligibility through their MPF contribution records, but if they do not have an MPF account, let's say for certain freelancers, we will still process their applications. The Home Affairs Department would engage 2 experienced NGOs to vet these applications. Perhaps the officials can come back to Mr. Dominic Lee's questions later. Mr. Champan. Am I coming through? Yes. The government answered the DAB's call by introducing a temporary unemployment relief, and I welcome this move. we hope the application criteria would be as lenient as possible in order to not deter applicants. And on the other hand, a subsidy is offered to cleaners and security workers and the taxi trade. During COVID, some people would take taxis, and the taxi trade is under great stress. And hopefully, the government can consider providing a $2,000 monthly subsidy to taxi drivers.
And for public transport, there is some $30,000 subsidy for buses. The two bus operators are suffering a great deal. One of them is sustaining a loss of tens of billions of dollars. The other one sustained a loss of $100 billion or more. Perhaps there should be more subsidy according to the sizes of the buses. And also, cross-boundary coaches, now they have been incorporated in the subsidy, the drivers also. But the thing is, there are some cross-boundary cars or drivers. We have 600 or so in this category. They have been ignored this time around. Perhaps the small vehicle crossing the boundary should also be subsidized. I defer to the THB. Thanks very much, Mr. Ben Chen. For taxi trade, we understand that they are under tremendous pressure. We are subsidizing $30,000 per taxi, and we also give fuel subsidy of $2 per liter. And this is offering immediate support to reduce the burden. And this will improve the operating condition immediately. We heard the other suggestions. We hope that we can get on with the proposals now, and we have heard the public sentiments. We hope that this can be improved. Mr. Chen, well, you said that the taxi drivers are subsidized for their gas payment, but they are running out of patrons, and it doesn't help them much. But they still have to pay for the rental. So some sort of cash allowance would be far more or far better than subsidizing them for the gas charges. As the chief executive said, the government might need some drivers to transfer people to the hospitals, and I hope that the government would consider this. The cross-boundary vehicles, the government doesn't seem to be offering any support to them. Yes, we heard what members have to say, and we will have regard to members' view. Mr. Tommy Zhang. Mr. Zhang, am I coming through? Yes, indeed. Thank you. Secretary, I've seen this AEF 6.0. The Liberal Party is supportive. We do have a number of different members from different sectors, and they are pretty disappointed because they fall short of our expectations. Here, the fresh food wholesalers like fish, egg, and so on, they are covered, but there are some other wholesalers like abalone, dried seafood, and so on. They still have a lot of stock in the warehouse unsold, and we have warehouses where wholesalers who are selling the noodles and so on. They are also suffering under current circumstances. So will the Secretary be looking at this. As long as they are providing supplies to the catering trade, they should be covered. There are so many workers in the catering trade who are underemployed or fully unemployed, although they haven't been sacked or they haven't left the company. For those who are temporarily unemployed or underemployed, will this subsidy be covering them? Third, in 5.0, the catering trade was covered. Compared with the last round, the amount is doubled. Instead of $5,000, they're getting paid $10,000. For those who already got paid for the fifth round, will you minimize the procedures and not make them make the application afresh? Secretary. Right. I defer to Pico to address the question about those who are unemployed. Thanks very much, Mr. Zhang, for the question. First of all, for the wholesalers, under the AEF, we did cover them before. But they are the wholesalers. They're not the retailers. We fully appreciate that there are people who are underemployed, although they're not out of a job per se. We hope that we can use the finite resources to offer assistance to those who are hardest hit in the shortest time possible. As regards the fifth and the sixth round, perhaps the director can say something about it. Yes, in the AEF 5.0 and 6.0, the FEHD has dealt with about 20,000 catering premises. We have received almost all the applications for the fifth round. And there is a process of vetting. We have to verify all the information to make sure that the premises are still operating and also in possession of the valid license. So the two rounds will be dealt with separately. But since the two rounds are so close together, all the verification work in the fifth round would be conducive to the verification of the sixth round. We believe that within 2 to 3 weeks of the application coming in, we should be able to disperse the funding. Ms. Rebecca Chen. Ms. Chen? Rebecca Chen. Chairman, thank you. Oh, Ms. Jovi Chen. Right, I'm glad that this is a groundbreaking approach. Like there is a $2,000 for 5 months for those who are on the front line battling the virus, and that would benefit more people and win hearts and minds. A43 regarding the temporary unemployment relief. I've got some questions regarding the numbers. First, $3 billion has been set aside for this purpose. The FTU feels that this is a step in the right direction, but this may not be a long-term thing. So we are suggesting that the pay should be half of the usual pay, up to $9,000 for 6 months. Let's say 100,000 people are making an application. It's going to cost us $1.4 billion at most. Now this, we suggested $1.5 billion be set aside for this purpose. We should allow individual workers to make the application and disperse the funding to the workers. In terms of number, perhaps we can broaden the scope. There were many workers who failed to benefit, like seafarers, photographers, freelancers. we should have regard to the different nature. Some of them are freelancers, some of them are part-time workers. There should be more flexible accreditation, like they should make application on the basis of their taxation record. Thank you. Secretary. Thanks very much, Ms. Chen. In terms of unemployment, I defer to Pico. Thanks very much for the question. This temporary unemployment relief is really a policy breakthrough, but it's not the same as the subsidy referred to by Ms. Chen, because she's pegging the subsidy to the pay. Now, the fifth round or the fifth wave of COVID is coming very aggressively, so we are acting swiftly to help those who are out of a job, and this is money for the needy. So we're making this very straightforward and pitch it at $10,000, so just one-off flat rate amount. Ms. Chen, you can rest assured that this relief fund will benefit all the sectors, as long as they comply with the requirements when they make the application. If they've been out of a job for 1 month, and if they are not making more than $30,000, now for these low, medium income people, whether they are full-time, part-time, or freelance people, they can make the application. Well, you said this is money for the needy. I fully appreciate that. But while we try to make it quick, the fifth wave is going to be going on for some time. We hope that we can provide a scheme that can filter down to the workers themselves. So I hope that you will come up with a scheme that will be pegged to the pay. Pico. Well, this is a long-term policy issue. Perhaps I defer to the LWB for a follow-up. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Jeffrey? Am I coming through? Yes, please. Chairman, thank you. The new round of AEF is offering $27 billion to various sectors, and 750,000 individuals will benefit. That this may not cover everybody, but at least when the economy is taking a battering, people can have some sort of a relief, and as SMEs will not have to close down. The government has learned from previous experience and enhanced and streamlined a lot of the administrative arrangements. I hope that the administration will get on with the application as soon as possible, so that the money can be dispersed to the needy as soon as possible. But the virus will not be over overnight. There are so many people and businesses who are outside of the scope. In order to plug the gaps, I think the government should introduce enhance the ESS scheme. The last round, money was dispersed to the businesses that were making profits. I think we should cover all the businesses that are severely hit. There should be a pay subsidy. That the government should disperse $10,000 celebration consumption voucher, and the principal moratorium should be introduced, and the subsidy for different sectors should be increased to address the needs of the public. Convention and exhibition subsidy. I think we should cover all the stakeholders who organized events after 2019, and with vaccine pass coming on stream, the government should come up with a plan to reopen the border with the mainland to help different sectors to recover. The government should extend the waiving of the water tariff and for the non-residential premises, and electricity should be subsidized. The government should also provide a 5-year rates subsidy. We hope that in the budget there will be good news for everybody. I let the administration some time to make a response. Well, this cuts across a number of bills. I think Mr. Lam referred to government fees and charges and also the budget initiatives to help the principal moratorium scheme. I've got nothing much to add. However, as regards convention exhibition sector, in the earlier AEF, we have set aside $1.07 billion, and money is still available. In October last year, some funding has been dispersed. That's why in this round we're not making any extra provision. Mr. Lam referred to the ESS at the beginning. Perhaps the LWD might wish to supplement. Well, time is up for Mr. Lam. And the key thing is the government has heard what Mr. Lam has to say. Right? Let me read names: Kingsley Wong, Horace Jones, Vincent Cheng, Kwok Wai Keung, Gary Chen, Rebecca Chen, Kirsten Young, Mr. Lee Sai Wing, Andrew Lam, Leung Hei, Chan Pui Leung, Candy Fogg, Tony J, Wendy Hong, Michael Look. I'll read out other names as we go along. Mr. Kingsley Wong. Chairman, thank you. Secretary, my thanks to the administration for taking on board the FTU's suggestion to roll out the temporary unemployment relief so that 700 or 750,000 people will stand to benefit. However, there are some gaps between what the government is proposing and what we are proposing. Now, for the TUR, it is $10,000. One has to be out of a job since for a month, and if it is $10,000, it's going to cost us a lot more. Now, about 12% will be able to use to use up the $3 billion. Will the government give us the undertaking that the TUR be expended to cover those who are underemployed? And if you're not using up the entire amount, will you extend the period for application so that this $3 billion will benefit all the workers? That the cross-boundary ferries have been suspended without any subsidy. Will the government be plugging this loophole so that the seafarers of this cross-boundary, or the Macau ferry, will also benefit? The government has rolled out some measures to recognize their contribution. Now, for the hospital authority and universities, I hope that similar subsidies should also be made available to them. First, PICPO, about Hong Kong Macau ferry, the LWB and FSTB will talk about the subsidized disadvantaged organizations. Chairman, the temporary unemployment relief, like Mr. Wong said, it is $3 billion in terms of funding. We anticipate that 300,000 workers will stand to benefit. Now, how do we arrive at $3 billion? At the present moment, the jobless rate is not particularly bad. It's 3.9%, or 140,000 people who are out of a job. But last year, the jobless rate was 7.2, or a quarter of a million people were out of a job. We work on the basis of the situation there and allow ourselves some room to work out the budget.
So under that circumstance, we're talking about 300,000 people. So we should concentrate our efforts in helping the unemployed. Mr. Kingsley Wong is right in pointing out that this scheme will not benefit those on no-pay leave or unemployed. We would resort to other channels to help them. Mr. Wong talked about our threshold being too high. I beg to differ. Let me clarify. The unemployed person should have been out of job for 1 month before he makes the application. Say if we start application in mid-March, that means that he would have gone out of job in mid-February. So he is already meeting with our eligibility criterion. THB. For every cross-boundary vessel, a $500,000 subsidy, non-accountable amount will be disbursed to them. Now, for those who are underemployed, so the TUR will provide some relief. Thank you, Chairman. So I'll read out all the names of those who would like to ask a question. Horace Cheung, Vincent Cheung, Kwok Wai Keung, Chen Hak Kan, Chen Hoi Yan, Yang Wing Kit, Lee Sai Wing, Lam Xiu Lo, Leung Hei, Chang Pui Leung, Fok Wai Kong, Che Wai Chun, Hong Man, Lok Chung Hong, Lau Kwok Fan, Tan Ka Biu, Wendy Hong, Frankie Yik, Ronick Chan, Kenneth Lam, Lam Chen Sing, Leung Ji Wing, Regina Yip, Tang Fei, An Men Yu, Yu Pak Leung, Eunice Yung, Zhao Xiu Chong, Lam Chi Yun, Tam Ngok Hang, Chao Meng Kong, Ng Kit Chong, Michael Tian, Chi Kwok Kong, Alice Mack, Lok Hon Man, Deacon Chiu, Yim Hong Kong, Oden Chao, Lee Chen Kang, Tik Chi Yun, Wong Ying Ho, Maggie Chen, Starry Lee. I believe that I may not allow other members to ask on top of the list. Mr. Horace Cheung, 4 minutes, including questions and answers. Thank you, Chairman. Compared to the previous rounds of AEF, I think the latest round is quite good. Well, it has several features. First, it covers more sectors to be subsidized, and for the sectors to be subsidized, a high level of subsidy is given. And then you are launching also the temporary unemployment relief. And previously, at the LegCo, we have been advocating this for a long time, and ultimately, the government is willing to do it now. So I and my DAB are in support of this AEF for coming up with a speedy relief for people in a plight. I have several points to make. First is about the TUR. It will be rolled out. Would you cover those people who don't have proof coming from the MPF contribution? Can you model after the self-declaration under the working family allowance? Now, if they make false declarations, then they're criminally liable. So I think if you do that, you can streamline the procedures and can better help those grassroots families. Now, second point, well, bureau directors are here. They are responsible for drawing up the policies. But I think in previous rounds, I think the problems lies in implementation. Sometimes it is the departments and sometimes it is outsourced agents which are vetting the applications, and they are afraid of making mistakes. And sometimes companies have been vetted in the previous rounds, but then they are asked to give information afresh. So can the policy bureaus avoid that kind of problem so that we can avoid, say, duplication of the verification procedures? You are applying for $26.7 billion, and 20% is for contingency. So that's $5.4 billion. What kind of purpose would this serve? Would you actually allocating more to help people? Will it be a better approach? The first question, I would defer to the head of PICO to respond. Mr. Horace Cheung raised a second point about the vetting procedures. Can we streamline the procedures? I believe that every policy bureau will learn from their experience, and we have heard your views. We'll try to streamline all the procedures, shorten the application time. Contingencies. In the previous round, we have also made a contingency provision. Well, we are only coming up with initial estimates, and they may not be very accurate. So we want to have the contingency to cover areas which may not be well covered. And these, in the previous rounds of AEF, in certain areas, we have gone over budget, and we have to draw from the contingency provision. We would like to be more flexible, so we would like to offer the greatest convenience to the public in vetting. Head of PICO, we see eye to eye with Mr. Cheung. Now, for applicants with MPF accounts, and those without, we would ask them to make a declaration that they have lost their job at the time of application. Mr. Vincent Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. First, I welcome AEF 6.0. Enhancements have been made, and legislators have asked for improvements, and they have responded well, especially rolling out the TUR. I will not repeat what others have said on this. I hope that you can resort to a simple mechanism to do it. And the HAB is the responsible bureau. I hope that they can adopt a human people-oriented approach, and they can learn from their experience. I have two questions. A lot of sectors and a lot of elements are covered, but there are two inadequacies. And while no support is given to the wet market store operators, well, a lot of people, a lot of store owners in the wet public market have been affected because of Leave Home Safe. And in Temple Street, in the ladies' market, business is very slow. This time round, they are not being supported. In the budget, can they be covered if they are not covered this round? Third, about the sports venues, and more resources are allocated to the sports venues. And I have been working together with Kenneth Falk, and we advocate for more support to registered sports coaches. And sometimes people, the sports coaches may not get registered. So can you also support this group of people, because they're now living from hand to mouth? So can I ask the FHB and the HAB to respond to the two questions? FHB first, please. Secretary, can I defer to the director of FHD for this round of AEF? We are targeting those who have been affected by the restriction measures implemented starting from the 7th of January. Under the subsidy scheme for catering industry, we would also cover the food stores in the cooked food market. One-off subsidy will be of $50,000 will be given to them. But for the store operators within the wet market, they're not directly affected by the restriction measures, so they're not covered. But then the government has been providing financial relief to them in other ways. under previous rounds of AEF, we have been promoting the contactless payment scheme in the wet market. In the 2 rounds of exercise, we have provided over 3,000 store operators in wet market with subsidy. The government has also waived rental for them. From the October 2020 to March 2021, 40% rental waiver is given. And from the April 2020 to March 2021, 75% rental waiver is given to them. HAB? HAB? Yes? Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Chairman. The sports coaches, apart from the registered sport coaches, there are part-time sport coaches, LCSD, who are covered. So can I defer to the Sports Commissioner to answer the other question? Sports Commissioner? In brief, we have a dedicated program for sports coaches. These have to be registered sports coaches. But then there are other programs which are open to application for non-registered sports coaches. So if the sports coaches are teaching classes under LCSD programs, so they can apply for subsidy irrespective of whether they are registered. And if these coaches are teaching in schools, well, depending on the circumstances, subsidy can also be given to them. They don't have to be registered. Mr. Kok Wai Kang. Thank you, Chairman. Several points from me. Well, under AEF 6.0, the long-awaited TUR is launched, and the government has responded to FTU's request, and a bit of relief can be provided to workers, hopefully. But the workers have told me that they're concerned as to whether workers under no-pay leave are eligible for TUR or those who are casual workers or underemployed. The government says that they would take reference from MPF account records. To my knowledge, those over 65 years old don't have to contribute to MPF. So how can they prove that they are out of job because of the epidemic? The Sports Commissioner said that freelancers include non-registered sports coaches. They are freelancers. In your paper, and under your plan, they are not eligible. And in AEF 4.0, 5.0, they were not eligible either. Can these freelancers apply for TUR? Can they make a declaration and that you don't have to rely on the FPF account? And the NGO's assistance will be sought to vet the application. The government, it is the government which comes up with the eligibility criteria. Have you drawn up that yet? And then for the cleansing and security workers, some peers have already covered this. A lot of cleaning workers and security guards have told us if you are only covering workers under government service contracts and also those working in residential buildings, commercial buildings, and so on, you are not being fair to others, those who are working in the subsidized organizations and not getting any relief. They are also contributing a lot to the anti-epidemic efforts as well. Can I defer to Head of PICO to respond to the first question? Like what the member said, for the temporary employment relief, this is very much of a breakthrough. So we would like to draw up very clear criteria. We want to adopt a targeted approach, targeting those out of job. The member referred to those who are on no-pay leave, but they still have a job. It's just that they are temporary not working. Say, for example, in catering establishments, there is a dine-in ban, and they don't have to go to work, and they're required to take no pay leave. We suggest that we would use some other channels to help those on no pay leave. Our present program should concentrate on helping those unemployed. As for the application procedures, I can guarantee that it will be as simple as possible. You suggest that if an employee doesn't have MPF record and he can then make the declaration that he is out of job, then well, this is something that we can accept. Does HAB have anything to supplement? If not, then maybe we can respond later. We have heard your views. HAB, can I add? Apart from cleansing workers and security guards in private buildings, can you speak up, please? Under AEF, there is another measure covering the cleansing and security guards employed by the government, and also for the those working in airport, the high-risk area. So these cover those in public organizations. Mr. Gary Chen, thank you, Chairman. First, I would like to thank the government for incorporating DAB's views. Under AEF 06.0, the temporary unemployment relief will be dispersed, and they will be providing support to laundry trade, the dishware washing trade, and guest houses. But there are still some gaps. I would like to make 3 suggestions for the government to consider. First, from the start of the epidemic to now, many barbecue sites, though they are not under food license, they are being affected by the epidemic alike. And from AEF 1.0 to 5.0, they are also being missed out. So can the Secretary pay attention to this? And then for the environmental protection industry, they are also facing great hardship under the epidemic. You might think that a lot of people are having takeaway meals, and there are a lot more disposables utensils being used, and that will boost the business of the environmental protection industry. Well, but the recycling business is not benefiting because people will just throw away the disposable utensils. And the recycling industry is like the cleansing industry. They would rely on workers to sort out the recyclables. And the AEF is barely supporting this industry. So can you consider providing relief to the recycling industry, which is in a plight? Thirdly, I know that the government will provide relief for cleansing workers and security staff in the shopping malls, but then for their counterparts in working in the parks, hotels, and so on, they are missed out. So maybe I have misunderstood. Can you clarify? Can this other group that I mentioned be covered as well? Thank you. Barbecue size. Can I defer to the FHB and then recycling, ENB? And then for the third question, I'll see if HAB has anything to say. FHB first. Barbecue sites. Is FHB or who will take the question? FHB on the food production, catering establishments. Will barbecue sites be covered as well? Are they under, say, the food production or food factory license, or FHB? Well, FHB will take the question. Can I defer to the director of FHD? Like what I said, this measure targets those affected directly by the epidemic. Mr. Chen talked about barbecue sites. Well, they operate in different forms. If they sell food and they provide tables and chairs for people to have barbecue in the site, then they should be covered by a food license.
As such, they can apply for the relevant subsidy under the scheme. For other barbecue sites, they might operate in other forms. For instance, if they merely sell chilled or frozen food, then it would hold a fresh produce license. If they do not provide tables and chairs for on-site consumption, then they would be considered a food factory, and they do not hold a restaurant license, and as such, they would not be covered. Since time is limited, for the rest, please get back to the member afterwards, Ms. Rebecca Chan. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the policy bureaus for rolling out the AEF 6.0. I support all these proposals, but I do have some suggestions and questions. For businesses that are ordered to close, such as some laundry shops, barber shops, karaoke lounges, etc., the subsidy merely helps them pay wages, but they have to continue to pay rent despite having zero income. And many landlords refuse to offer a rent concession. So can you arrange meetings with landlords and developers and lobby a concession in rent? Or else many businesses will still find it hard to survive. I support the idea of an unemployment assistance, but applications will only be open in March. So I'd like to know more about the timeline and how the procedures can be streamlined. You said you would vet their applications and they must be unemployed for at least a month. So how can the money be dispersed as soon as possible? Under unemployment is a form of unemployment. We are talking about very expensive groceries, and vegetables cost as much as $30 or $40 per kg. These people are living in hardship, and many have exhausted their savings in the first, before the fifth outbreak. And as other members suggested, for freelancers or those without an MPF contribution account, would they be allowed to make certain declarations? They are not currently eligible since they don't have an MPF account. Apart from providing support through the AEF, the fifth outbreak has persisted for some time already. Can the government embrace new mentality by offering short-term tenancies? Can the government actually hire the coaches for anti-epidemic purposes? Now cinemas have been ordered to close. Would you consider hiring cinemas on short-term leases for vaccination, Secretary? In terms of rents, the chief executive and different policy bureaus have conveyed this message to landlords where appropriate. At the CEDB, I've said that it is important for one to help out each other in their time of need, and many landlords have actually offered a rent concession. Ms. Chan talked about temporary leases or recruitment of staff. The CSB has been hiring already. In terms of public transport, the chief executive said this morning that it is possible for taxi drivers to usher certain or to bring certain people to places of quarantine, etc. And we might hire some coaches, etc. as well. In terms of the unemployment relief, we have addressed the point already, and perhaps the PICO can supplement if needed. Mr. Kitson Yang, I have some follow-up questions. First of all, I support AEF 6.0, and it is certainly very helpful. But there is still room for improvement for property management staff or security and cleaning workers. For those working in community centers and schools, they are not receiving any support at all. So I wonder whether this would be improved. For the taxi and minibus trades, nowadays many patients have to take the taxi to reach the A&E wards, and many of them are not, well, the drivers are unsure whether these are confirmed cases, and very often they would have to disinfect the entire vehicle. For the subsidy for amusement centers, offering a 6-month relief is not enough. The government has supported the catering industry, but the wedding banquet operators or providers are suffering, and many people are unemployed. As for the exhibitions industry, they resumed operation in the year 2021, but once again, due to the tightening of social distancing measures, the operations have been halted again. So would the government offer a one-off subsidy again for wet markets? Since visitors are required to use Leave Home Safe, their business has declined by 70 or 80%, and no support has been offered to store tenants. Hopefully something could be done to help them. Secretary, I would invite the Transport and Housing Bureau to talk about the taxi and minibus trades. For the rest, I would invite the other bureaus to respond. For taxis and minibuses, I have heard Mr. Young's views in terms of fuel subsidy. We are proposing a $2 subsidy per liter, and this would last 5 months. We will continue to monitor the situation. Under AEF 6.0, taxis and minibuses would receive a subsidy of $30,000 per vehicle. And like we said, taxi drivers can bring individuals to places of quarantine, and we are discussing the details with the trade. Once details are confirmed, we would make an announcement. For Food and Health Bureau, what about the wedding banquet trade, as well as security workers and cleaners working in schools and community halls? Food and Health Bureau. Chairman. Most schools continue to hire cleaners and security workers despite the increased workload in recent days. Since class is suspended, we have not included schools in the subsidy schemes. Mr. Stanley Lee, I have a few points to make. On the whole, I support the proposal for holders of food factory license. Many restaurants have been ordered to close due to the pandemic. For businesses operating as food factories, their business has taken a hard hit, but they weren't covered under AEF 6.0. Some members talked about the taxi trade. Yesterday, we met the taxi trade together with the secretary, and taxis have contributed to the anti-epidemic work by bringing people to their places of quarantine, but the fuel subsidy you are offering is minimal. Well, the fact is the government has called for people to refrain from gatherings involving multiple families, so a fuel subsidy of $2 per liter is insufficient. Since they have made great contributions by conveying confirmed patients, so can more be done to help them? Some societies are not welfare organizations under the Social Welfare Department. They have been summoned by the government to help distribute rapid test kits, and yet they do not receive funding under the lump sum grant system. So they have helped distribute face masks and test kits, etc., but they still have to pay the wages despite the lack of assistance. Secretary, I would invite the FHB and THB to answer the first two questions.
食衞局先啦嚇。
FHB.
好，我哋食環署代答。
For food factories, since the focus of the measures is on restaurants providing dine-in services, they have been hard hit by the social distancing measures. So the priority is to support these companies. Catering premises can still offer takeaway services. For food factories, they are relatively less affected. That's why they were not included in this round of measures. Some food factories operate in food courts of shopping malls, and there are about 1,700 such premises. Can other departments answer questions for taxis? We provide a $30,000 non-accountable subsidy for each taxi, and this should be rather helpful for drivers. Even for non-owners, they would receive a fuel subsidy of $2 per liter. I acknowledge the challenge faced by the trade, so we will continue to monitor the situation, and we take note of members' views. We thank many organizations and societies for volunteering to help battle the pandemic. Some societies have not been affected by social distancing measures. For societies holding a food premises license, they could benefit. That's why we would not be providing a subsidy for societies specifically, But if they fall under one of the 48 categories, they could benefit as well. But we do express our gratitude to their help and contributions. Your time's up, Mr. Andrew Lam. According to survey results announced by SOCO last week, more than 90% of the surveyed grassroots had employment difficulties. Many of them are underemployed, and 18% of the respondents have to take non-paid leave. I acknowledge that this round of support measures is for those who are unemployed, but for grassroots who are underemployed, they are having a very difficult time as well. Could support be offered to them through other channels? I hope the government can follow up on that. Enclosure 44 talked about creation of jobs. There were this plan commenced quite some time ago, and some posts are yet to be filled. For the 30,000 time-limited jobs to be created, what is the timeline, and how many of these jobs are new jobs, and how many are extensions to current posts? I would invite the Civil Service Bureau to answer the second question. If time permits, I would defer to the head of PICO. In terms of job creation, 60,000 jobs were completed, and about 40,000 have been filled, and we are still recruiting for 15,000. We expect to fill the 30,000 jobs in 2 years, so we are ahead of schedule. We are creating another 30,000 time-limited jobs, and we are open to new job types. For jobs that are still needed, they could be extended. So from past experience, the split is about 50-50 for new and current jobs. PICO. Mr. Lam talked about the two groups of employees, the underemployed and those on non-paid leave. At the Labour and Welfare Bureau, there is the Working Family Assistance Scheme. Back when the pandemic started 1 or 2 years ago, the working hours requirement was halved from 144 hours to 72 hours. In other words, people would be eligible for a subsidy if they work 18 hours a week. For those on non-paid leave, we realized the situation. The catering sector would benefit from AEF 6.0. Once the pandemic stabilized, since last year, the unemployment rate has dropped to about 5%. So the measure would help retain jobs, which would in turn benefit employees. Mr. Edward Leung. Am I coming through? Thank you. I'd like to thank the government for accepting the DAB's proposal for an unemployment relief. Many people hope that the government would be more generous so that money can end up in their hands. According to your paper, applications would be open from March, and people can receive the funds in 1 month at the earliest. Is there any way to speed up the process? The DAB has asked for support for the logistics industry or to the transport the logistics industry of the transport industry, we see that buses, ferry operators, etc., would all benefit, and the subsidy level is 30,000 across the board. Different buses have different capacities. Why are they receiving the same flat rate? For the transport sector, why is a flat rate offered, unlike other industries? I would invite the THB to answer this question.
Well, we still have to await FC funding approval before we can get on with the work, but we have been making preparation for that a couple of weeks ago. We've been liaising with the MPFA, the trustees, and also the contractors. We understand that this is really urgent money for the needy. The paper refers to March. We don't really want to wait until the end of March. I mean, we will be getting on with this post-haste. We hope that by mid-March and end of March, and these can be dispersed. The application process is very, very simple. And application can be made online in the local centers. We're offering assistance to the low-income people to make the application online. We need a bit of information like ID, name, contact number, the bank account, and also the declaration. So the application form is very, very simple in order to speed up the entire process. THB. What about the transportation? THB, please. Chairman, thank you. For the transport sector, we understand that they are dealt a blow by the COVID, and the mobility has been affected, and the business has also been affected. Mr. Leung asked why it is a flat rate of $30,000. Now we have regard to the landscape, and there are operators that have thousands of buses in their fleet, so this arrangement is appropriate. Mr. Edward Leung, you still have a bit of time. Would you like to follow up? Can you make available the allowance on the basis of their capacity and the sizes? THB. We heard what members have to say. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Pui Leung. Chairman, thank you. I support the AEF 6.0. I support the early implementation. COVID has been with us for 2 years. The strict closed border makes it difficult for the insurance practitioners to do any business. According to some survey, Q3, there has been a drop of 97% in the business. Some practitioners told us that despite the fact that they are triple jabbed, and also they've been subject to PCR tests, people are not willing to take out any insurance. So their income has been really down to zero. The AEF in previous rounds didn't take care of these people. COVID is going to be with us for some time, so the insurance sector urges the administration to help them tide over the difficulties. We have some proposal. First, in the AEF 6.0, perhaps the eligible insurance practitioners should be given $10,000. This can be on the basis of the self-employed people in the previous round. And A43, the TUR, for those insurance practitioners who don't have MPF, they should also be covered. And the insurance authorities should make available some facilitation measures, like broaden the scope of the applicable products, and the procedures for remote operation should be relaxed. Secretary. PICO can address part of the question. Any sector, insurance or whatever, if they are eligible, if they are within $30,000 in their pay, they should be eligible. For the other part of the question, perhaps FSTB, the FSTB might wish to address the question. Yes, we are aware of this from the media. We don't have any particular scheme specifically for the insurance sector. However, we do have the 100% loan guarantee. Like Edward said, we have the unemployment scheme. We don't have any specific requirements for the sectors. As long as you fulfill the criteria, you will be eligible. The Insurance Authority in February last year rolled out some facilitation measures for the insured people to take out some insurance products. We have extended these to other insurance policies as well. If you look at the statistics, Mr. Chen referred to some numbers. For some long-term business, like non-investment products or annuity products, the number has been increasing. So COVID has made people more aware of their health and the insurance of protection of their health, and the demand has been stimulated. The SFC and the Insurance Authority have been promoting the development in this area, like the investment-linked insurance products and so on. And we'd like to bring more business to the practitioners. I'm prepared to communicate with Mr. Chen more to see whether there are any measures that can help the trade. Mr. Chen Pui-Leung mentioned the insurance trade. In fact, in many industries, people are not out of a job, but they have seen a bettering to their pay, but the government should offer some help. Mr. Kenneth Fogg. Thank you, Secretary. This 6.0 proposal has taken on board some of my suggestions, like increasing the fitness center and the rental assistance, rental waiver, and the pyrotechnics and so on. I'm grateful to the administration for taking on board some of these suggestions. I'm in support of the AEF. However, there are some gaps in the proposal, and I'd like the administration to make some response. Mr. Vincent Cheng made a point about the coaches, the instructors, and they are an important element. NSA and SOs, there are many organizations that have good credibility. Swimming, fitness, tennis, they have been well established. I hope that the government will loosen up the regulations and try to understand the background of these organizations and see how or whether they can be roped in to do the accreditation to benefit more people. Now, for the fitness centers, they have been separated out. I'm grateful for them to be incorporated. But the sporting venues or the premises have not been included, and this seems to be dividing the trade. In coming up with a decision, why did you come up with this arrangement? If you bring them all together, you're not really incurring a lot more money. Now, the cinema sector, the Broadway, Victoria Cinema City, have announced their closure. Ms. Rebecca Chen referred to the problem of rental. Cinemas have sustained tremendous losses. Is there any room to increase the level? Now, there are many cinemas that have more 30 screens. On the optics, there is a platform. Can we waive the charges incurred for people to dispose of their ticket? Now, for Hong Kong to become an East-West international cultural center, it is important for us to have a subsidy. The government should offer some subsidies to the events in the cultural sector. And I hope that these well-established cultural events should be kept on as much as possible. Secretary, in this AEF, we may not be able to satisfy all the demand over the past 2 years. Now, this is the sixth round. Every time we take on board various views, like Mr. Kenneth Fogg, he's concerned about his sector. We have taken on board some of the suggestions. We fully appreciate that for the cinema sector, they have been dealt a blow because they have to stop the business. They've done a good job in the anti-epidemic work. We are offering subsidies to the cinemas in this round. Now, Mr. Fogg mentioned the coaches and the refund of tickets and so on. I defer to my colleague. I fully agree that we should make it as flexible as possible, in particular for the coaches, and we're trying to be liberal with regard to the application. For the arts and culture, we are benefiting the large and small-sized arts groups. For the accreditation, I've heard what members have to say. We try to make it as liberal as possible. We've heard what members have to say. We also have arrangement for the refund of venue charges and ticket charges. We have the arrangement for that. Mr. Tony J. Chairman, thank you. COVID is raging, and the government is spending money to help those who are in need, the individuals, the businesses, the operators that are in need. I am in support of this move. I must make a declaration that I am chairman of the Building Management Authority. The authority is assisting the government to disperse the hardship allowance to the workers on the front line in the building management industry. Now, my question is A35 and A37. Now, A35 is providing the allowance to the security guards and cleaners employed by the Housing Authority and Housing Society. $10,000 each. We cost the government $720 million. The government is seeking $1 billion. Now, why is it there is such a discrepancy there? A35, $280 million. What was that money applied for? Now, Mr. Yao said that 60% of the funding is dispersed to individuals. From the paper, there are many programs that subsidizing the operators. The workers are dealt a more severe blow because of COVID. How can the government render assistance to the workers themselves? Perhaps the operators can provide some information to the administration as to the proportion of money that will be devoted to subsidizing the workers' pay. It doesn't add to the administrative cost. You can spot check on this. Perhaps you might wish to consider this. Also, some other members mentioned A27 about the support for the transport trade, whatever form of transport. It is a flat rate of $30,000. It would be fairer if you subsidize according to the types of vehicles and the sizes, like for the catering trade. The franchise buses are huge. they cannot be compared with the small time vehicles. Why is there not any differential there? A35, I defer to FSTB, A37, and I defer to THB, and I respond to the other question if time allows. FSTB. Thank you. I heard the question there. Let me explain a little bit here. A35, the government, the HA, and the Housing Society, these organizations hire cleaners and security guards. We don't have the precise numbers now. In order to allow flexibility, we will have some room for maneuver. You mentioned $200 million. That's for contingency purposes. We don't have the precise numbers about the head count and how many people are going to be eligible for the allowance under the scheme. Secretary, well, there is a big discrepancy there. Mr. J, sorry. Time is up. Ms. Wendy Hong. Secretary, I support the whole series of measures. I'm sure there are a lot of the business and individuals will stand to benefit. I think more resources should be devoted to support people who are isolating at home. The virus is spreading in the community. Our healthcare system cannot really take on the patients with mild symptoms. I think we should take appropriate measures. I think it's time for us to consider Plan B. There will be a lot more patients with no symptoms or with mild symptoms who will be isolating at home. What sort of support are we giving to them? The most important thing is to educate the public to differentiate between cases of severe cases and mild cases. And I think we should reserve the resources to those who are really in need. My understanding is that we can look at the blood oxygen. It is lower than 90% once you go to seek medical attention. According to Temasek, they provide an oximeter to each household, so the people will be able to monitor the oxygen in their blood. In desperate situation, they should seek medical attention. This has been serving them pretty well. Also, I noticed that the public are trying to buy a lot of medication. The Chinese herbal pill, the Nianhua Qingwen Jiaonang, has been very much in demand. And I think in this fund, we should use the household as the unit. We provide 2.5 million households in Hong Kong with a medication kit and an oximeter. And it's going to cost us about $300 million. This will reduce the burden on the healthcare sector. This will allow people to ascertain whether they should go and seek medical attention so that the severe cases can be dealt with more efficiently. FHB. Chairman. Indeed, from the anti-pandemic effort point of view, there are some people who have tested positive, and they are waiting to be sent to quarantine centers. From the point of view of dynamic zero COVID strategy, we have to put the patients in the quarantine facilities. The facilities are really overstretched, although we are expanding the facilities. There is very much a bottleneck there. At 4:30, the hospital authority will be announcing a whole raft of measures, including hotlines and designated clinics and a whole series of other arrangements regarding the information kit, and there will be an announcement at 4:30 later on today.
Which is the next bureau to take the question? The FHB has responded to the question. Let me digress a little bit. Some members, Mr. Tony Chair and Wendy Hong, referred to the need for subsidy for all sectors in Hong Kong. But every time when we launch the AEF, we want to adopt a targeted approach. We want to allow flexibility as well so that enterprises and individuals can expend the money to suit their own specific needs. So we cannot specify the purposes for which the enterprises have to spend the money. Some enterprises are finding it hard to pay for the salaries. Others find it hard to pay for the rental. So we should allow flexibility for the enterprises and the sector, the flexibility on how they expend the subsidy. In my opening remarks, I have said that we have heated views from various sectors of the community. Apart from preserving jobs, supporting enterprises, we are also meeting the needs of the individuals. Hence, this round of epidemic, we are dispersing funds directly to people who are out of job because of the latest wave of the epidemic. So 60% of the fund will be spent on individuals. Mr. Michael Loh. Thank you, Chairman. The epidemic has dealt a blow to all sectors, and AEF 6.0 is an improvement from previous rounds. And for the TUR that will be rolled out in response to FDU's requests, I would like to talk about transport and the aviation sector and marine sector. A lot of drivers have been dealt a blow by the epidemic. Now, for drivers, this time round, school bus drivers, coach bus drivers will be subsidized. But for bus drivers and minibuses drivers, they are not offered any subsidy. I hope the government can consider subsidizing them as well. Their income has declined, and the risks are also have been heightened, especially for taxi drivers. They're under high risk because a lot of patients to go to see the doctor riding on a taxi. And for for cleansing workers, they will be given allowance. Would you do the same for taxi drivers? And for the Hong Kong Macau ferry seamen, they have not been subsidized. I hope that $20,000 allowance can be dispersed to them. And for also the cargo workers, I hope that $10,000 can be given to them. It's like the airport staff in targeted groups. Now, especially, we're seeing blockages in land transport these days. Sea transport is all the more important. So I hope that the government can give more support to the cargo workers in sea terminal. Now, I welcome the government's plan to give subsidy, $10,000 to air staff in targeted groups. Around 20,000 staff members will be benefited. I hope that you can extend your coverage. For example, those who are working on, say, the meals on air flights, their income has been cut by over half because they don't have enough work. And at the same time, they have made great contributions to the work of the airport. So let's not miss them out. And then for cleansing workers, a subsidy will be given to them. But there are other similar traits similar to cleansing workers. For example, for those working on refuse collection vehicles, sewage vehicles, they are also exposed to high risk. I hope that they can be covered as well, like the cleansing workers. And then lastly, the LWB will be making expression payment to interest class instructors hired by NGOs. No, I don't think that's fair. Now, there are some organizations which are not subsidized by the government, and the workers in these organizations are not covered. So why doesn't the government cover these other workers as well? For workers in subvented NGOs, they have benefited from 2 rounds of AEF. So can the government also subsidize the group that I mentioned? THB first, to respond to Mr. Look's question. First question. Bus drivers, taxi drivers, cross-boundary ferry workers, and aviation staff and so on. We have heard Mr. Michael Look's views. We are dispersing a non-accountable sum of $30,000 to the rivers, to the drivers, and then for the cross-boundary vessels, $500,000 being given out. We know that the trade faces a lot of challenges. We have heard Mr. Look's view, and we will consider further. Mr. Tang, Bill Tang. Can you hear me? Yes. Government officials, good afternoon. I would like you to fill the gaps. Now you are talking about 48 measures. You have responded to our request to provide protection for employment. So we support you on the scheme, and we like to thank you. But then there are still a lot of people who have to be assisted. They have not been covered. The first, the Kwun Tong fish market fixed license hawkers. While the market has been installed with leave home safe, and workers are actually deployed to monitor that people use leave home safe. But then the business is very little in that market. And because of the requirements of the license, the licensed hawkers have to stay in that market. Well, we held a press conference last week. There are around 100 stores there. So I hope that you can help this group of fish market store operators. And then for the LCSDs, refreshment kiosks run by the LCSD. Now, they can't operate these days because many of the LCSD venues have been closed. So why can't you support them? So I hope that you can, these two departments can help with these small operators and store operators. And then the third part is about workers. Airport security staff asking whether they are given $2,000 as well. And for universities, there are cleansing workers, and they are asking whether they will be covered. Some of them are doing cleaning work for student hostels. And then for E&M workers, I would like to speak on their behalf. Now, lift maintenance is a high-risk trade. So I hope that you can also give them $2,000. I hope that the government can respond to my requests. First, I would like to ask the FEHD, the FHB, and the HAB to address the 2 points made by Mr. Tang. We have to be mindful about the needs and the resources involved. Anyway, I've heard your views. Let's hear from the FHB first. So can I ask the director of FHD? The Kwun Tong fish market. There are now around 110 hawkers. But I know the business has been slow there, and that has to do with the overall economic environment. The URA last June has employed a special company to help promote the market and attract people there. And the company has hosted a number of workshops, performances, and other activities. We will watch closely the market situation there. And our office every month will be meeting with the store operators there. And we hope to hear more views to so that we can improve the overall situation. Last month, we have changed the licensing conditions to allow the store operators to sell all other kinds of merchandise, hoping to boost their business. Ms. Carmen Khan. Thank you, Chairman. And the total amount of all AEF rounds will be around $200 billion. And I'm happy that a lot of government officials are here to answer our questions. We will try to address the concerns of the Hong Kong public. We talk about giving money in a timely manner, and the PICO said that they would implement all the measures as soon as possible. There are policy bureaus or implementation departments. So will there be dedicated teams among the various policy bureaus to help with the implementation? And the ITB said that only 1.1 million people have applied to use the IM Smart app. Can we leverage IM Smart to expedite all the procedures? So that's point number one. Number two, the government has taken the lead in offering a 75% rental discount lasting for 6 months. Will the government like to appeal to private landlords to do the same? And the FSTB officials are here today. Now, you are now preparing for the budget. So would you be providing policy incentives to landlords who are willing to reduce their rent? So if you don't have an immediate answer, please consider afterwards. Now, next question is for the Education Bureau. Under the epidemic, a lot of low-income families have children of low-income families have to learn online in schools. So will help be rendered to this group of children? Thank you. Can I ask ITB, FSTB, and EDB to respond to the three questions of Ms. Khan? Chairman, thank you, Ms. Khan, for your question. For the IM Smart, the main purpose is to provide a single app for members of the public to access different government and private websites to get service. Ms. Khan asked us to use IM Smart to disperse the funds under the AEF. Well, to ensure that the funds can be dispersed as soon as possible to support members of the public, then IM Smart may not be appropriate because different government departments have to modify their websites in order to do that. So after looking at the pros and cons, I think we will leave it to the different government departments to disperse the funds in the manner that they deem fit. Then that will bring the most benefit to Hong Kong people. The next bureau, please. FSTB, please. Yes? Chairman, the member referred to rental waiver. As the member said, Previously, we have offered rental concession to tenants of government premises. Going forward, do we have similar measures to help tide over the difficulties with the tenants? Well, we have heard the members' view. Mr. Frankie Yik. Mr. Frankie Yik, thank you, Chairman. I would like to thank many members who have spoken on behalf of my sector. For example, the allowance for taxi, bus drivers, and how come that there is a flat rate subsidy for all types of vehicles. I think we should not differentiate between employers and employees because both sides need to be taken care of. So if employees out of job, they are facing hardship, and employers also face a lot of challenges because they have to pay the rent, the staff salary when business is slow. Now, as for taxi and minibus drivers are facing high risk, and they are willing to serve Hong Kong people. So the government can encourage them. And if you are just dispersing $2 subsidy per liter of petrol, well, I think you're offering them a subsidy lower than that for the cleansing workers. They won't be happy. I think you should give them, say, $2,000 per month for 5 months, or you can pay them a $5 subsidy per liter of petrol. And then passenger vehicles are also given subsidy, but they are confined to those who are licensed under the TD. And then in the airport, there are a lot of such vehicles, and they don't have to be registered. They have to be licensed under the TD, and they are similarly passenger vehicles. So without any travelers, the business has been slow, their income has been cut. So why don't you take care of these vehicles as well? I think you have missed them. So please consider providing subsidy to them. And then recently, fresh foods and vegetables have been very expensive because we are running short of cross-boundary truck drivers, and that's because the quarantine requirements are very stringent on the mainland. So if so let me cite an example. In Tai Kwu Shing, if there is a case, now drivers living in Tai Kwu Shing, they are not admitted to the mainland. So some 1,000 drivers cannot work. Now, would you be supporting them because they would not have to suspend work for 21 days? In the past 2 years, they have contributed a lot to the society. So can the government consider helping them? Yesterday, we received the government's paper, and my email has been bombarded with emails. Well, in the previous rounds, the lorry drivers have been subsidized, and they are also in dire straits, and they are affected. How come that they are not getting any subsidy? And also the marine vehicles, the workers on the marine vessels, rather, and they have contributed a lot to Hong Kong, and they've always been missed out. I hope that you can help them through using the contingency provision and plug these gaps. The last thing that I must talk about is bus companies. Well, patronage has dropped by 40%, but then these companies have still to pay the staff salary, and staff salary makes up a great part of the expenditure of bus companies. And tens of thousands of dollars will be given to the bus companies for every vehicle, and then the petrol subsidy doesn't help them too much. So can you not launch ESS again? You can enhance this scheme. You would not be giving the subsidy to everyone. So if a company is going to make a profit, then it will not be subsidized. So if we take those companies out, so a 3-month ESS program will cost around $20 billion. I hope the government can seriously consider this scheme. Well, you know that a lot of catering establishments are folding. Well, in a minute, Mr. Peter Shield will tell you the plight of the retail sectors. I think the ESS is something very important, and I hope that the government can consider launching it again. Your time's up, Mr. Yik.
好，阿易議員用晒。
Mr. Yik has exhausted his time slot, and the time is now 4 p.m. We shall take a 10-minute break. We shall continue at 4:10, and Mr. Ronnie Chan will go first. Thank you.